how to meet the needs of an organization in addition to the needs of my patients. I personally think we have been very well equipped to adapt as necessary because our physicians understand what patients need and have been willing to innovate when necessary in order to keep us relevant and help us change when necessary. We also work on a different compensation basis than most medical centers in the United States. I am paid a salary. I am not paid on the basis of how many patients I see or how many tests I order or how many of my patients go on to have surgery. I absolutely adore working where I work, even though my compensation does not vary depending on how hard I work, although it's something I can count on, and it's a very fair salary that I receive, as do my colleagues. We care very much that a patient who leaves the Mayo Clinic says, I had a good experience, I got high-value care, and that's something we have organized our entire operation around. And even within the United States, this is fairly uncommon, but it's something that we truly believe is important, so patients can trust us to make the right decisions for the sake of their health and their needs, not for the sake of my personal compensation. We also have a model of care. This has 14 components, and I just want to share with you the 14 ingredients that we feel are especially important to a high-quality, high-functioning healthcare organization. We work as a team. We have many handoffs. We share information. We all are wiser as a result of being in a team. We spend time with our patients. We spend as much time as we need to understand our patients' needs and expectations and to provide them the education about their condition. We have a single physician who is responsible for each patient. So if a patient goes off for a whole series of tests or consultations with other specialists, there's one physician who knits that together and comes up with a comprehensive plan and perhaps a unifying diagnosis or multiple diagnoses. Many of our patients do not live in the community where we have our operations. They travel to see us, and it's very important we work with their local physician so that we can receive the patient and get the necessary background, and we can send the patient home with the local physician picking up where we left off. We try to not only be very good scientists and technologists from a medical perspective, but also understand our patients through a prism of compassion and a focus on hope and healing. And we really try to demonstrate respect for the patient, their family, their community, including their local physician. Oops. Two more principles that we value are that our evaluations are comprehensive and timely. There are certain points in a patient's illness where they need to be seen, they need to have a diagnosis made, they need treatment, and we try to the best of our ability to identify those points and do what's needed at the right time. We try to use innovative, advanced technology when necessary, but not overuse it. Just enough, not too much. We also care greatly about our care environment. We want all of our staff to be operating at a very high level of quality, so we recruit the best, we help them get better, and we hope that they will stay for their whole career. I started at Mayo Clinic as a student when I was 22 years old. My hope is that I'll retire, not anytime soon, but spend the entirety of my career working for this one organization. In the United States, that is not the most common experience. We recruit people who are very committed to working hard, who believe in our mission, and who believe in our values. And we try to have an environment where we encourage people to ask questions, to be scholars, to advance our understanding of disease, and try and open up new therapy techniques. We, of course, as I've already mentioned, believe that physicians, not alone, in combination with other administrative leaders, play an important role in our leadership teams. We have a medical record that follows the patient, This, these days, is not quite as novel since electronic medical records are readily available, but we did this back in the 1920s, where a paper file would follow a patient as they move throughout their Mayo Clinic experience. So everyone's clinical note was placed in the same record, and we then therefore could get a complete understanding of a patient's needs. I have already mentioned that we pay our physicians well. We don't pay them as highly as we possibly could, but we pay them enough that they come to us knowing that they can live a comfortable life, but they are motivated by other things, by altruism, by scientific curiosity, not simply by money. And we also try to have a very distinctive look and feel. We ask our physicians to dress fairly formally to indicate respect to our patients. We construct our buildings very carefully so that they are a healing environment. And we try to have a setting that is peaceful and help a patient feel relaxed. Now, we certainly have our own challenges, and I want to take a moment to touch upon those. In the United States, there is a tremendous need for health care, and so in some communities there is a shortage of physicians as well as hospitals. And so we at times struggle with more patients wanting to see us than we have a capacity in the near term. We continue to try and address this and look for new ways, such as telemedicine, where we perhaps can help our patients with using a variety of tools. We work in a system where almost all of our competitors are compensated based on volume instead of on value. We refuse to compromise. We continue to be an outlier, but sometimes we find ourselves in a challenging situation because the way the medical reimbursement is not the way that Mayo Clinic has been designed, although clearly we're doing pretty well. Like in China, we have an aging population with individuals becoming older and having more diseases and often having more than one disease. This is testing us, but we're trying to do our research so we are better and better to meet the needs of our older patients. We work in a highly competitive markets. There are many well-regarded hospitals in the United States, but we do our best. We welcome the competition. It keeps us on our toes. It helps us become better and better at what we do. Some people would view us as being somewhat expensive. It kind of depends on how you look at it. We may be somewhat expensive for a single test, but if we only do one test instead of doing 10 tests, that's actually not as expensive as the place that does 10 moderately priced tests. And that's what we try to, how we try to serve our patients. We are very clear about what our goals are. We want to offer a high-quality patient experience. We care very much that our patients and our staff are satisfied with the experience they get. We care about our patients and their communities being healthy, and we continue to try and innovate so we can contribute to the United States and the world being a healthier place for all of us. And we also care about the cost of care. We look forward to having more and more services that can be done in a more economical way. And you'll hear shortly from one of my colleagues who will talk about some of the new tests and treatments we have that represent a cost savings but still offer very high quality care, a very high level of value. At Mayo Clinic, we are very committed to having a strategic plan that we use in addition to our values as we make decisions. And you can see on this slide the 6 points that help us decide where we are going to expand, where we are going to contract, what are going to be our priorities. And they reflect many of the things I've been sharing with you this afternoon. It is my pleasure, after working at Mayo Clinic for 30 years, to have the opportunity to tell you a little bit about what makes this institution special, to give you an insider's view of what Mayo Clinic is all about. And shortly you'll hear from some of my colleagues about other aspects of Mayo Clinic so that you can also see why we hold it in such high regard. Thank you.
谢谢 Dr. Cran。我们刚才听到的是 Mayo Clinic 如何管理他们这医院的。说到管理，现在我们大家在我们大家的心目当中有一个共同关心的一个题目，就是信息科技如何跟医疗能够结合在一起。下面这位演讲者，他将会讲述医疗信息系统成功实施的要素。现在我们有请下一位演讲者 Mr. John Crooks。
Allow me to practice my Chinese. 大家好。谢谢。My name is John Crooks. I'm an IT division chair at Mayo Clinic. I operate out of the Jacksonville facility, and I've worked at Mayo Clinic for 23 years now, all in information technology. I started my career in the Bay Area in California in the United States, in the industry of telecommunications, also all technology-based and implementations and support for our trade shows, technology trade shows. So just a short 35-year career in information technology based around the electronic medical record. And in the last two and a half years, I've had the privilege of supporting our research, education, and global business solutions from an IT perspective, working closely there with my colleagues. Today I'm going to share a little bit about some of the lessons learned from a Mayo Clinic perspective on implementing technology in a healthcare environment, so hopefully you'll find this interesting. Talk a little bit about the technology, the implementations we've done, and hopefully end up with a little bit of information about some of our lessons learned and some of the ingredients for successful implementation. I'm sure you all are very familiar with records, handwritten, where we started from a medical industry perspective. Dr. Cron talked a little bit about Mayo Clinic's unique approach to that we actually had a record that followed the patient from floor to floor so that a patient could be seen much more efficiently in a multidisciplinary environment. Over the last 30 years or so at Mayo Clinic, we have worked on and strived to automate all of the individual practices, radiology, cardiology, neurology, the hospital floors, the emergency department. And after we did that, we realized we really needed to find a way to connect all of those systems together so that we could share information electronically. And again, just as we did with paper medical record, we wanted to make sure that we could the information would efficiently follow the patient through their care at Mayo Clinic. After accomplishing that, we moved on to the Health Information Exchange. So in the United States, one of the things that we have been afforded through the standards that have been established over the many years is our ability to share information not just within Mayo Clinic, but with other institutions throughout the United States. So now, as patients are referred into Mayo Clinic for the very complex diseases that they're coming to see us for, our clinicians have access to their previous care, the current medications they're on, the problems that they have been having over the last maybe 5-10 years, and have a better understanding of what that patient's experience has been and potentially what Mayo Clinic might be able to do for them. And then where we're headed, obviously with artificial intelligence, because we have very clean data, we've really worked hard to make sure that we have good information and information that is based on standards. We are able to write algorithms against that data, mine that data, and try and provide insights to our clinicians and hopefully around the world around diseases and the treatment patterns that we recommend for our patients. This slide is a little representation of some of the recent things that we've been doing around telemedicine, whether it's a tele-ICU where we have a monitor and cameras in an ICU, or tele-neonatology where our physicians are calling in, our specialists who are looking at infants with very, very serious problems. They're able to look at that infant a long distance away, have a conversation with the clinicians who are in the room, and talk together, collaborate around a potential life-saving solution for that child. On the bottom here is one of the things we're experimenting with right now, and that's really around our neurology and stroke inside the United States is having the cameras inside of our ambulances as patients are being transferred into the hospital so that our ED and our neurologists can actually evaluate the patient before they arrive physically in the hospital so that they're better able to care for them and again, hopefully dismiss them more efficiently. As Dr. Cron mentioned, we do have a very extensive Mayo Clinic Care Network. You can see it depicted here a little bit differently. The important thing from an information technology perspective around this care network is we are leveraging these partners across the United States and around the world to find a way to share our knowledge at Mayo Clinic. We have a product that's called Ask a Mayo Clinic Expert, and what it's doing is taking the knowledge, the way that we are treating for patients and we anticipate care for a specific disease at Mayo Clinic and sharing that electronically with physicians around the United States and around the world so that they can see how their patient might benefit from the practices at Mayo Clinic. And so from an information technology perspective, trying to make sure that we have efficient mechanisms to share that information, manage the language barriers of translating the English versions that we have into Chinese and Philippine and Indian so that it makes sense and is relevant to the physicians in those areas. Changing direction a little bit here, healthcare implementations do present a fair amount of challenges. These graphics here are designed to help me make sure I touch on a couple of important focal points. The first graphic is obviously we've got a phone there, technology, reimbursement and finances, the expense of technology and the reimbursement for technology, and the symbol in the middle, our poor physician who's struggling, really just trying to manage patient care, and we keep throwing these things at them. And so it's constantly in our mind from an information technology perspective of making sure that we're keeping at the forefront our physicians' experience with the computer and what they're trying to do from a reimbursement perspective as we introduce technology. And it's not just the computer in the room. The lower graphic here is intended to indicate the number of devices that are generating information for our patients and being coalesced by our coordinating providers, as Dr. Cron mentioned. What we need to do, why artificial intelligence is so important, is that we really need to pull all that information together and synthesize it for our physicians in a very coherent fashion so that they have the best information at their fingertips to understand what's going on with that patient, a particular patient, and not have to worry about going from system to system to system to system to get the information that they need. Some of the lessons learned around Mayo Clinic's implementations, as I said, really since the middle 1970s, we've been automating our clinical practices, both in the clinic and in the hospital settings. And these symbols here are 6 or 7 of the things that we've identified out of really trying to make our implementations as successful as possible. The first one is collaboration. And one of the things that I'll highlight a little bit later is the value of Mayo Clinic's model of care. As you heard earlier, Mayo Clinic was founded on a physician and administrative partnership, making sure that each of those individuals is bringing talent to the table. When we're talking about a technology implementation, it's not just taking the IT component and putting it out there for people to use. It's listening to what's going on with your customers, understanding how they're going to use it, how their workflow is going to change, and making sure that across a multidisciplinary team, you're understanding how that technology is going to be implemented effectively. The second graphic there is around leadership. So important to make sure that your leadership is on board with the technology that you're implementing. Oftentimes, as a technology geek, I get enamored with the new bells and whistles that are available, but until it's ready to be used in prime time patient care, you need to make sure that you are aware of when that is, when the right time is to introduce that technology, and leadership is critical in that. The third graphic is talking there about decision making. Another lesson learned that we've had from our implementations at Mayo Clinic is making sure that not only in the hierarchy of decision making in the hospital around an implementation is documented, but it's shared with everybody throughout the entire environment. Because the people on the front line are the ones who need to make sure that they understand if they have a question or a concern with a decision around an implementation, where that needs to go so that it can be resolved as quickly as possible. Obviously, being tied to your missions and values, each hospital has its own culture, understanding what the mission and value are for system implementation, training, quality, and then the last graphic there is under benchmarks. Dr. Cron highlighted that Mayo Clinic has proudly been recognized as one of the top premier organizations in the United States and the world. That does not prevent us from measuring ourselves against the rest of the world. Having open dialogues like this, and hopefully some of the questions that we'll get to later from the audience, will help us understand what we're doing well, what you're doing well, and how we can learn from each other, making sure that we're moving forward in the best possible direction for the healthcare industry. So we'll talk a little bit more about the partnership between physicians and information technology. Again, at Mayo Clinic, I have the distinct honor of working in an organization where my physician colleagues hold me accountable to bring information technology expertise to the table. I am treated as a partner, I am treated as a colleague, and with that comes the expectation that I do bring valuable information to the conversations. Through that collaboration, which is really a part of the DNA at Mayo Clinic, whether it's with information technology, other administration, our nurses, our physicians, the fact of the matter is that a trust is built up and a very open and questioning environment where my colleagues across the table can challenge whether or not my perspective on information technology is correct, and likewise, I can challenge their ideas about how things might be implemented in the practice. And through that, as you saw in some of the videos earlier, we come up with a very collaborative and the best possible solution for moving forward. One of my fun quotes that I put up from Ernest Hemingway, an author in the United States, well, maybe in England, when people talk, listen completely. Most people really never listen. And one of the things in the meetings at Mayo Clinic that I have come to very much respect is the fact that across the table, people are encouraged to put their devices down. In this very connected world, it's so tempting to just try and keep your email going, read those emails and keep up with them while a dialogue is going around the table. That will erode the trust that you're creating with your partners, especially around implementations. So making sure that you really do listen and make sure that you're bringing value to the table so that you can, again, make sure that from a technology implementation perspective that you're making the right decisions and knowing that you can't have everything. Coming up with the collaborations and the give and take that's required in a major implementation is absolutely critical. So change is hard. People go at change at a different rate. I rather enjoy this picture because it's not just that this individual is jumping across a chasm and the cliff. I like this picture because from my perspective, talking about innovation, which Dr. Pak will share with you a little bit later here, this individual actually identified that if they just step on the sun, it'll make it a lot easier to get over to the next side of the cliff. So talking about change, there is a curve, and there are a couple of topics I want to touch on this. First of all, when you implement new technology, often you change people's reality. And so when our clinicians leave for the day one day and come back the next, we've completely changed their software environment out from underneath them. And when they're talking with their patients, they need to know where to find the information, how to get to it, how to place the orders that they need to do, and they need to do that in a very timely fashion. Although we do have maybe a little bit more time than your physicians do in the China healthcare market, we still do expect that our clinicians are able to get through an encounter with their patients rather quickly. So it's important to understand that when that happens, when we change out the software, there's going to be a dip in productivity. And so one of our lessons learned at Mayo Clinic is make sure that for major implementations that we actually reduce the number of patients that a physician is trying to see as they get used to the new software. And depending on the size of the implementation, that could vary, based on one day, if it's not too major, up to a couple of weeks for them to get back up to their full schedule of seeing patients. The second point on this chart is that individuals go through change at a different rate and pace. So some people, as you're talking about change, could absolutely understand it's the right thing to do and move along that curve very quickly. With time on the bottom axis here, other individuals may really require a little bit more time. One of my mentors at Mayo Clinic taught me early on to make sure I had that clear communication with my staff as we were talking through the changes with the committees, identify those people who were struggling with why we're making this change, and spend a little bit more time with them to make sure that we're all on the same page and able to move along that change curve as quickly as possible. So innovation and collaboration, it's a hallmark of Mayo Clinic. It is something that we believe in. I'm very fortunate to work with an organization that holds me accountable for my expertise, to bring that expertise to the table, and to respect the information that I am providing in front of them so that we can make good decisions. And hopefully we know that technology is here to stay, and we have to find a way to implement it most effectively, and hopefully we will do that. I look forward to your questions in the later session today, and hope that we will be able to learn from each other. 谢谢。
我们现在已经听了2位演讲者，我们剩下还有2位。但是我要问一下大家，在你们今天还没有来到这个公开课的时候，是不是都听说过 Mayo Clinic？ 听说过的请举手。哇，基本90%喽，是吧？所以当我说 Mayo Clinic 是世界著名的医疗机构的话，你们肯定是同意的，对吧？因为我们都听说过嘛。那么美国新闻和世界报道在最近评比全美最佳医院的综合排名中， Mayo Clinic 连续3年蝉联第1，又有名排名第1的这样的一个机构，他们也会创新嘛？我们一说创新，一般都说创业，是吧？双创在中国双创嘛。所以一说创新和创业，就觉得呢是新的公司、小的公司要颠覆这样的又有名、排名第1的这样的公司，是不是？所以我们现在下一个演讲者要告诉我们的是 Mayo Clinic 是不是在创新这方面怎么样去做的？演讲题目是创新无处不在 Mayo Clinic 的经验。大家欢迎 Dr. Raymond Pan。